The survey ship landed on Earth 300 years after the last humans had left for the stars. Commander stepped onto the wet sand and looked at the gray ocean. Her 4 eyes blinked at the strange beauty of this abandoned world. The humans had gone to other planets. They had built new homes far away, but they had left many things behind. "Commander," said her science officer, "our deep scanners found something under the water. It is large. It is made of metal." Looked at the screen on her arm device. The shape was long and strange. It had 4 round things on its sides. It had a pointed front and a tail at the back. She did not know what it was. "Send the underwater drones," she said. "I want to see this thing." They had come to Earth to study the humans. The humans were a puzzle to the galaxy. They had started as a small species on one planet. They had no natural weapons. They could not fly. They could not breathe underwater. They were weak and soft. But somehow they had spread across 1,000 worlds. They had built great ships. They had made machines that could think. They had become one of the most powerful species in the known universe. They wanted to understand how, so they came to Earth to look at what the humans had left behind. The drones went into the water. They swam down into the dark ocean, watched on her screen as they went deeper and deeper. The water became cold and black. Fish with strange lights moved past the cameras. Then the drones found the bottom. And there it was. The metal thing lay on the ocean floor. It was covered with plants and small sea creatures, but its shape was still clear. It was long like a fish but made of silver metal. It had wings on its sides. 4 round engines hung under the wings. The front had many windows. The tail stood up tall at the back. "What is this thing?" asked. "It looks like it was made to fly, but it is under the sea." Felt a strange feeling in her chest. She did not know why, but this metal thing made her curious. She wanted to know its story. "Bring it up," she said. "Bring it to the surface." The drones worked for many hours. They attached cables to the metal thing. They pulled it slowly from the mud and sand. Small fish swam away as it rose. Sea plants fell from its body. Higher and higher it went, until finally it broke through the surface of the water. The ship used its gravity beams to lift the metal thing onto the beach. Water poured from its body. Walked toward it and put her hand on its wet surface. The metal was cold. It had been under the sea for a very long time. "Look here," said he. Pointed to words painted on the side. The paint was old and damaged, but they could still read it. "Flying Tiger Line." "Flying Tiger," repeated. "What does that mean?" They used their translation computers to search the old human records. What they found made sit down on the sand in surprise. This metal thing was called an airplane. The humans had used it to fly through the sky. This particular type was called an L-1049H super Constellation. It was built over 600 years ago, in a time when humans could not even leave their own planet. 600 years ago, said quietly. They could not travel between stars. They could barely reach their own moon, and yet they built this. The Flying Tiger Line had been a company that moved things and people through the sky. They had many of these airplanes. This one had crashed into the ocean long ago. The humans who were inside had been lost. It was a sad story, but it was also an amazing story. Looked at the airplane with new eyes. She saw the 4 engines that had once roared with power. She saw the propellers that had once spun so fast they became invisible. She saw the wings that had once lifted this heavy machine into the sky. The humans built this with simple tools, she said. They did not have gravity beams. They did not have fusion power. They used fire and metal and their own 2 hands. And they flew, said. Yes, said they flew. She walked around the airplane slowly. She looked at every part. She saw the damage from the crash and the long years under the sea. The metal was bent in some places. Holes had formed where the salt water had eaten through. The windows were broken. The wheels were gone. But the basic shape was still strong. The airplane had survived centuries under the ocean. It had not fallen apart. It had not disappeared, it was still here, waiting. A strange thought came too, a thought that surprised even herself. "We should fix it," she said. Looked at her with confusion. "Fix it? Commander, this is a relic, a piece of history. We should put it in a museum." "No," said. She did not know why she felt so strongly, but something about this old machine spoke to her. The humans who built this wanted it to fly. They did not build it to sit in a museum. They built it to soar through the sky. We should honor their work. We should make it fly again. Was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at the airplane. He looked at the faded words that said Flying Tiger Line. He saw the same thing saw. This was not just old metal. This was a dream, a human dream of flight. "It will be very hard," he said finally. "We do not know how their old machines work." "Then we will learn," said. "We will study, we will work, and we will make this flying tiger fly once more." She put her hand on the cold metal again. She made a promise to the humans who had built this beautiful machine so long ago. She would not let their dream stay buried under the sea. She would lift it up. She would give it wings again. The restoration had begun. The work started the very next day, called for more ships to come from the home world. She asked for engineers and scientists. She asked for tools and machines. She asked for anyone who wanted to help bring an old human dream back to life. Many thought she was crazy. Why waste time on an ancient piece of metal? Why try to fix something that the humans themselves had forgotten? But others understood. They felt the same strange pull that felt. They wanted to see what the humans had been able to do with so little. The first team to arrive was led by Chief Engineer. He was old and had seen many things in his long life. He walked around the super constellation slowly. He touched the bent metal. He looked inside the broken windows. He crawled under the wings to see the engines. "This is impossible," he said when he came out. "This machine should not have been able to fly. It is too heavy. The engines are too weak. The design goes against everything we know about flight." "But it did fly," said. "The records show that it flew for many years. It carried people and cargo across great distances." Shook his head slowly. "Then the humans knew something we do not. They found a way to make the impossible happen." The engineers began to take the airplane apart. Every piece was removed carefully. Every bolt and wire was studied. They found that the salt water had damaged many things. The electrical systems were destroyed. The fuel tanks had holes. The control cables had rusted away. But the main body of the airplane was still strong. The humans had built it well. They had used a special type of metal that could bend without breaking. They had put extra supports in places where the stress was greatest. They had thought about every detail. "Look at this," said one young engineer named. She held up a small metal box. "This is their navigation system. It uses radio waves to find its position. The technology is so simple, but it is also very clever." Took the box and looked at it. It was covered with corrosion, but she could still see the small dials and switches on its face. Human fingers had once touched these switches. Human eyes had once watched these dials. Human minds had used this simple box to find their way through the sky. "We must learn how all of these things work," said. "We cannot just replace them with our own technology. That would not be right. We must fix them the way the humans would have fixed them." This made the work much harder. They had to study old human books and records. They had to learn about technologies that were ancient even by human standards. They had to understand how fire could be used to make engines turn. They had to figure out how simple radio waves could carry voices across great distances. Months passed. The super constellation sat in a large building that they had constructed on the beach. Pieces of it were spread across many tables. Teams worked day and night on different parts. Spent most of his time on the engines. The L-1049H had 4 Wright R3350 engines. They were round and complex, with many cylinders arranged in a circle. They worked by burning liquid fuel, and using the explosion to spin propellers. "It is like controlled fire," said one day. "The humans learned to tame fire and make it do their work. They put fire in a metal box and made it push them through the sky." The engines had 18 cylinders each. Each cylinder had to be cleaned, repaired, or rebuilt. Many parts had to be made new because the originals were too damaged, but insisted on using the same methods the humans had used. He learned to shape metal the way human engineers had done. He learned to measure things in the strange units that humans used. "Inches and feet," he muttered as he worked. "Why did they not use proper measurements? Everything about humans is strange." But could see that was starting to respect the humans. Every day he found something new that amazed him. The way the engines cooled themselves, the way the fuel was mixed with air, the way the spark plugs created fire at exactly the right moment. They understood the basic laws of nature, said. They could not break those laws. They could not create artificial gravity or bend space. So they worked with what they had. They pushed against the limits of what was possible, and somehow they succeeded. The body of the airplane was repaired by another team. They filled the holes in the metal. They straightened the bent parts. They replaced the broken windows with new glass made to look exactly like the original. The inside of the airplane was restored too. The seats were rebuilt with new fabric. The instrument panels were cleaned and repaired. The cockpit, where the human pilots had sat, was made to look like it had when the airplane was new. Often sat in the pilot's seat after the workers had gone home. She looked at the many dials and switches in front of her. She put her hands on the control wheel. She tried to imagine what it had felt like to fly this machine. The humans had no computers to help them. They had no automatic systems to keep them safe. They had only their own skills and their own courage. They had trusted their lives to this machine of metal and fire. They had believed that they could master the sky. One night, found sitting in the dark cockpit. The stars were visible through the windows above. "You have changed, Commander," he said. "This project has changed you." Nodded slowly. "I understand the humans better now. I understand why they spread across the galaxy. It is not because they are strong. It is not because they are smart. It is because they never stop trying. They look at something impossible and say, 'I will find a way.' They fall down and get up again. They fail and try again." She touched the old control wheel gently. "This airplane crashed into the sea. Its crew was lost. By all logic, it should have been forgotten. But here we are bringing it back to life. Because that is what humans would do. They would not let a good machine die. They would fix it. They would make it fly again." Sat in the co-pilot's seat next to her. "Then let us be like the humans," he said. "Let us make this flying tiger fly." And outside, under the stars, the super constellation waited patiently for its second chance at the sky. 1 year had passed since the super constellation was pulled from the sea. The work was going well. The engines had been rebuilt. The body was almost complete. The wings looked strong and ready. But then something happened that changed everything. A human ship arrived at Earth. Was in the hangar when she heard the news. She ran outside to see the ship landing on the beach. It was smaller than the vessels. Its design was different, but there was no mistake. This was a human spacecraft. The door opened and an old human woman stepped out. Her hair was white and her face had many lines, but her eyes were sharp and clear. She looked at them with curiosity, not fear. "My name is," she said. "I heard that you found an old airplane. I came to see it." Stepped forward. "I am Commander. We found the airplane under the sea. We are restoring it." His eyes grew wide. "You are restoring it, a super constellation?" "Yes, the L-1049H from the Flying Tiger line." The old woman's face changed. Could not read human expressions very well, but she thought she saw something deep and powerful in his eyes, something like hope and sadness mixed together. "May I see it?" asked. Led her into the hangar, walked slowly toward the airplane. She stopped a few meters away and just looked at it. Tears began to fall from her eyes. "What is wrong?" asked. "Are you hurt?" Shook her head. "No, I am not hurt, I am just amazed." She wiped her eyes. "You see, this airplane has a special meaning for me, for my family." She walked closer and touched the metal body. Her old fingers traced the faded letters that said Flying Tiger Line. "My great-great-grandmother was on this airplane when it went down," said. "Her name was Wei. She was traveling from Tokyo to the United States. She had a small baby with her. My great-great-grandfather." Stood very still. She felt the weight of what was saying. "The records say there were no survivors," said quietly. "That is what everyone believed," said, "but 2 people survived. Wei put her baby in a floating container before the airplane sank. A fishing boat found the baby 3 days later. He was still alive." Looked at with wet eyes. "Wei did not survive. She died saving her son. For generations my family has wondered about this airplane. We wished we could see it one more time, and now here it is. You pulled it from the sea." Did not know what to say. She had known that humans had died in this airplane, but now one of their descendants was standing in front of her. The history had become real. It had become personal. "I am sorry for your loss," said, "even after so many years." Nodded, "Thank you, but I did not come here to be sad, I came to help." "Help?" "You are restoring this airplane," said. "I want to be part of it. My family owes a debt to this machine. It carried my ancestor on her final journey. I want to see it fly again." Felt her heart lift. "We would be honored to have your help." From that day on, worked alongside the. She knew things about human technology that they had not understood. She showed them how to wire the electrical systems correctly. She explained how the fuel pumps worked. She taught them the sounds that a healthy engine should make. But more than that, told them stories. She told them about the Flying Tiger Line and its history. It had started as a military transport company during an old human war. The pilots had painted tiger faces on their airplanes. They had been brave and skilled. They had flown through dangerous skies to bring supplies to people who needed them. After the war, the company had become a civilian airline. It had carried passengers and cargo across the Pacific Ocean. The Super Constellation had been one of their finest airplanes. It could fly faster and higher than many other airplanes of its time. "The people who built this airplane were proud of their work," said. "They believed they were doing something important. They believed that flight would bring the world together." One evening and sat on the beach and watched the sun go down. The sky turned orange and pink. The waves made soft sounds on the sand. "Why did humans leave Earth?" asked. "You had such a beautiful planet." Was quiet for a moment. "We did not all leave. Some stayed behind, but most of us wanted to see what else was out there. We wanted to explore, to discover, to spread out among the stars." "Were you not scared?" "Of course we were scared," said. "Humans are often scared, but we do not let fear stop us. Fear tells us that something is important, something worth doing." She pointed at the hangar where the Super Constellation waited. When the first airplanes flew, people were scared of them. They said that humans were not meant to fly. They said it was too dangerous, but some people flew anyway. They crashed. They died, but they kept trying, and eventually they succeeded. Turn to look at. That is who we are. We are the people who keep trying. We fall down 7 times and get up 8. We lose our loved ones in the ocean, but we save our children. We let our old machines sink into the sea, but centuries later, someone pulls them out and fixes them. Thought about these words for a long time. "You are a strange species," she said finally. Laughed. "Yes, we are, but strange is not always bad." The next morning, work continued on the Super Constellation. The propellers were attached to the engines. The control systems were tested. The fuel tanks were filled for the first time in centuries. The day of the first flight was coming soon, and the spirit of the Flying Tigers was alive in that hangar. It lived in every bolt that was tightened, It lived in every wire that was connected. It lived in every hand that touched the old metal. Human hands and hands, working together, bringing a dream back to life. The super constellation stood on the runway. Its silver body shone in the morning light. Its 4 propellers pointed at the sky. It looked like a bird waiting to take flight. Walked around the airplane one more time. She checked every surface, every joint, every seal. 2 years of work had led to this moment. 2 years of learning, building, and hopping. Now the day had finally come. But there was a problem. None of them knew how to fly it. They could fly their own ships easily. Their vessels used thought control systems and artificial intelligence. But the super constellation had nothing like that. It needed a pilot who could move the control wheel with their hands. It needed someone who could push the pedals with their feet. It needed a human touch. Was too old. Her hands were not steady enough. Her reactions were not fast enough. She had studied the controls and understood them, but she could not fly the airplane herself. I have sent messages to the human colonies, said. I asked if anyone still knows how to fly these old machines. And asked. Most people laughed at me. They said that no one has flown propeller airplanes in hundreds of years. The skill has been forgotten. Felt her hope begin to fade. They had worked so hard. They had rebuilt every part of the airplane. But without a pilot, the super constellation would never fly again. It would just be a beautiful statue, a monument to a lost age. Then 3 days later, another ship arrived. It was a small cargo vessel, old and worn. It landed roughly on the beach, kicking up sand and stones. The engine sounded like it was about to die. Smoke came from several places on the hull. A young human man climbed out. He was tall and thin, with dark hair and dark eyes. His clothes were patched and dirty. He looked like someone who had lived a hard life. I heard you need a pilot, he said. Looked at him with doubt. You know how to fly a propeller airplane. The man smiled. My name is Jack. My family has kept the old skills alive for generations. We fly antique aircraft on the colony world of New Montana. I have been flying since I was 10 years old. Stepped forward. Can you fly a super constellation? I have never flown one, Jack admitted. But I have flown similar types. The DC-6, the Electra. I know how these old birds work. He walked toward the super constellation and looked at it with love in his eyes. He touched the propeller blades. He ran his hand along the wing. He was like a man meeting an old friend. She is beautiful, he whispered. I never thought I would see one of these in real life, only in pictures and old films. Over the next few weeks, Jack studied every part of the airplane. He sat in the cockpit for hours, learning where every switch was. He practiced moving the controls until his hands knew them without thinking. He read the old flight manuals that had brought from the human colonies. Helped him understand the engines. They did ground tests, running the propellers while the airplane stayed still. The sound was incredible, a deep roar that shook the air. The propellers spun so fast they became circles of silver light. 4 engines, said Jack, each one with 18 cylinders. That is 72 cylinders total. 72 small fires working together to push us through the sky. He shook his head in wonder. Our ancestors were amazing. They had no force fields, no gravity control, no shields, just metal, fuel, and courage. The first test flight was planned for the next week, but the night before there was a storm. Rain and wind pounded the beach. Lightning flashed across the sky. The hangar doors rattled and shook. Stayed awake all night. She worried about the airplane. She worried about Jack. She worried that something would go wrong at the last moment. When morning came, the storm had passed. The sky was clear and blue. The air smelled fresh and clean. Ran to the hangar to check on the super constellation. It was fine. The old airplane had survived another challenge. It sat there quietly as if it was saying, I have waited this long. I can wait a little longer. The whole team gathered on the runway, and humans stood together. They watched as Jack climbed into the cockpit, climbed in after him and sat in the co-pilot's seat. "You do not have to come," Jack said to her. "Yes, I do," replied. "My family has been connected to this airplane for 600 years. I will be there when it flies again." Jack nodded. He understood. Spoke to them through the radio. "Are you ready?" "Ready," said Jack. His voice was calm but excited. "Start the engines." Jack followed the checklist that they had prepared. He pressed buttons and pulled levers. One by one, the 4 engines came to life. First there was a coughing sound, then a rumble, then a roar. The propellers began to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster. The noise was tremendous. It filled the air like thunder. The ground shook under the power of those ancient engines. Smoke and flame came from the exhaust pipes as the fuel burned. The super Constellation was awake. After 600 years of silence, its heart was beating again. Jack's voice came through the radio. "All engines running normally. Fuel pressure good. Oil pressure good. Temperature normal." He took a deep breath. "I am going to take her down the runway. Just a taxi test first. We need to make sure everything works on the ground before we try the sky." The airplane began to move. Slowly, carefully, it rolled down the runway. Its wheels turned smoothly. Its body swayed gently on its landing gear. It looked like a great silver fish swimming through the air. Watched with tears in her 4 eyes. The dream was so close now, so very close. The flying tiger was ready to earn its wings once more. The day of the true flight arrived. The sky was perfect, blue and clear with gentle winds from the east. It was as if the planet itself wanted the super Constellation to succeed. Stood at the edge of the runway. Next to her stood, and dozens of other engineers. On her other side stood family. They had come from across the galaxy to see this moment. Children, and great of the woman whose ancestor had once flown on this very airplane. Jack sat in the cockpit, sat beside him. Their hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. They had done many taxi tests over the past week. They had practiced takeoffs and landings in simulators. They were as ready as they would ever be. "Mission Control," said Jack through the radio. "This is Flying Tiger 1, requesting permission for takeoff." Smiled at the name he had chosen. Flying Tiger 1, it was perfect. "Flying Tiger 1, she replied. "You have permission, good luck." Jack pushed the throttles forward. The 4 engines roared louder. The propellers bit into the air. The super Constellation began to move down the runway, slowly at first, then faster, faster, faster still. The noise was incredible. It was like standing next to a waterfall made of fire and thunder. The ground vibrated under his feet. The air trembled with the power of those ancient engines. The airplane's speed increased, 50 miles per hour, 70, 90. The wings began to generate lift. The nose started to rise. The wheels grew lighter on the ground. And then, with a gentle grace that seemed impossible for something so large, the super Constellation left the Earth. It rose into the air slowly. Its wheels lifted off the runway. Its wings caught the wind. Its body tilted upward toward the sky. It climbed higher and higher, leaving the ground behind. Everyone on the runway cheered, and human voices mixed together in a sound of pure joy. Felt tears running down her face. She did not try to stop them. The super Constellation flew over the ocean. It flew over the spot where it had crashed 600 years ago. It flew over the water that had held it prisoner for so long. But now it was free. Now it was home. Jack's voice came through the radio. "She flies beautifully, better than I ever imagined. The controls are smooth. The engines are strong. This airplane wants to fly." He laughed with pure happiness. "I am going to take her up higher. I want to see the clouds." The super Constellation climbed into the sky. It passed through small white clouds like a silver arrow. The sun reflected off its wings. It looked like a creature of light and metal dancing with the wind. Inside the cockpit was crying. She looked out the window at the world below. She thought about her ancestor Wei, who had looked out this same window so long ago. She thought about the baby that Wei had saved. She thought about all the generations that had come after. "Thank you," she whispered. She was not sure if she was talking to the airplane, to her ancestor, or to the universe itself. "Thank you for bringing us back together." Jack flew the airplane over the beach, over the hangar, over the crowd of people watching below. He tipped the wings left and right in greeting. The crowd cheered even louder. For 1 hour, the super Constellation flew through the sky. It performed gentle turns and climbs. It showed off its grace and power. It proved that old things could live again, that dreams could survive centuries of darkness, that the human spirit could never truly die. When Jack finally brought the airplane down, the landing was perfect. The wheels touched the runway softly. The propellers slowed. The engines quieted. The super Constellation rolled to a stop in front of the cheering crowd. Jack climbed out of the cockpit. People rushed forward to hug them, and human hands patted their backs and touched their faces. Everyone was laughing and crying at the same time. Made her way through the crowd to stand in front of Jack. She bowed her head in the gesture of deep respect. "You have done something wonderful today," she said. "You have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. You have reminded us why your species is so remarkable." Took's hands in her own. "We could not have done it without you. You found the airplane, you restored it, you gave it back to us." "We did it together," said, "and human, working as one." That evening there was a great celebration on the beach. Food was shared. Stories were told. Music played under the stars. The super Constellation sat nearby, its propellers still and quiet, watching over the celebration like a proud guardian. Came to stand beside. The old engineer looked at the airplane with something like love in his eyes. "I understand now," he said. "I understand why the humans conquered the stars." "Tell me," said. "It is not their technology. Other species have better technology. It is not their strength. Other species are stronger. It is not even their intelligence. Other species think faster." He paused and looked at the crowd of humans and celebrating together. "It is their spirit, their refusal to give up, their belief that anything is possible. They look at a broken airplane at the bottom of the ocean and say, 'We can fix that.' They look at the empty spaces between stars and say, 'We can cross that.' They face death and say, 'Not today.'" Nodded slowly. "They are not the or the strongest, but they are the most stubborn." "Exactly," said, "and sometimes stubbornness is the most powerful force in the universe." Looked at the super Constellation one more time. This machine had crashed. It had sunk. It had been forgotten. But it had not been destroyed. And when someone came along who believed in it, it had risen from the ruins and taken to the sky once more. That was the human way. Fall down, get up, try again, never stop, never surrender, never let go of your dreams. The flying tiger had earned its wings, and in doing so, it had taught the most important lesson of all. Hope never dies. It just waits under the sea until someone is brave enough to pull it back into the light.